Hello bookworms, I'm Hannah and I have news. I moved! I am no longer confined to a 500 square foot apartment flanked by an airport and a fire station, bookended by a bus stop and a busy main street. I finally have room to record. Ta-da! But I don't have any bookshelves. That's a problem I hope to remedy sooner than later, but for now, let's talk about my first month of reading in 2018, which consisted largely of forging my way through hefty dramatic classics and counterbalancing those with some youthful light reading. Despite the chaos and stress that accompanies finding a new place and physically moving, in the month of January I read 2 picture books, 1 chapter book, 4 middle grade novels, 2 young adult books, 1 nonfiction, and 3 adult fiction books for a total of 13 books. Ugh. Smells like cardboard box in here. Ugh. First up is Mango and Bam Bang, Taper All at Sea by Polly Faber, illustrated by Clara Vogliami, a chapter book in which Mango Allsorts, a girl who's good at all sorts of things, and Bam Bang, an Asian taper with an affinity for wearing hats, continue their adventures in the big city. This book contains 4 charming short stories to do with finding a hobby, the importance of family, and contending once more with Mango's troublesome upstairs neighbor, Cynthia Prickleposset, who really stoops to a new low in this book. If I'm being completely honest, it's also about having friends in high places. The black and white illustrations are just as delightful as they are in book 1, with one obvious difference. The pop of lavender has been traded for a brilliant shade of red. If you're looking for gentle stories about friendship and banana pancakes to share with your little ones, be sure to check out Mango and Bam Bang. Just when I thought my month of reading was over, I picked up Beatrice Zinker, Upside Down Thinker by Shelley Johannes, and flew through this book after being lured in by its adorable first chapter. The only person who appreciates Beatrice Zinker's upside-down way of thinking is her best friend, Lenny. But when Lenny returns after a summer away with a new outfit and a new friend, Beatrice must employ her topsy-turvy thinking to save their friendship. I feel like the story of a best girlfriend going away for the summer and coming back changed has already been told a million times, but those books are usually for older children, particularly teenagers. Beatrice Zinker is lower middle grade, bordering on a chapter book. It's loaded with amusing illustrations, and its word count is manageable for children reading at the same level as a Beverly Cleary or Roald Dahl book. Beatrice Zinker, Upside Down Thinker, teaches that some friendships are worth fighting for and that there are infinite upsides to being yourself. It's the perfect fit for anyone who doesn't quite fit in. Before I get to a lofty classic, we need to talk about Moomin Papa's Memoirs, written and illustrated by Tove Jansson, a lively middle grade novel that gives account of young Moomin Papa navigating one quirky adventure after another. This book sees Jansson making a departure from the usual formula. She switches primarily to the first-person perspective of Moomin Papa with occasional third-person interludes, whereas the previous books were entirely in third person. This shift in perspective allows us to really get to know this character who, up until this point, has either been missing or off in his room writing his memoirs. Moomin Papa is a philosopher, an adventurer, and a hopeless romantic. At times, he's a little too sure of himself, and he never hesitates to exaggerate for the sake of the story. Highlights of this book include Moomin Papa's retelling of how he met Moomin Mama, and my favorite illustration of all the Moomin books I've read so far. It's an image of Moomin Papa traversing the ocean depths in a peculiar contraption. The waves are crashing above, and the depths are lit from below by great sea creatures and mermaids who hold glowing lanterns. It perfectly captures the whimsy and wonder of these books. I have 5 more Moomin prose novels to go, so you'll be seeing more of these cute little guys in my future wrap-up videos. Now we get to a Gothic mystery first published in 1860, The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. It doesn't quite open with a woman in white, as the synopsis suggests. It's about 30 pages before the young drawing master, Walter Hartwright, encounters the ghostly woman on a moonlit night. In her desperation to share a dangerous secret, she ensnares Hartwright in a mystery he'll have to risk his life to solve. A little backstory on Collins. Though he wanted to be a writer, he acceded to pressure from his father to study law, which he did, but he never practiced law. After his his father passed away, Collins went right back to writing and crafted this novel that people are still enjoying over a century later. A lawyer's practicality and Collins's knowledge of law is evident in his linguistic style. At times, his writing is quite technical, reading more like a courtroom document than a fanciful tale. Sometimes that works to his benefit. Other times, it results in a book that feels much longer than it needs to be. Collins's one flaw, if you will, is that he often takes a lengthy paragraph to state what most authors could accomplish in one sentence. Nonetheless, The Woman in White is a harrowing mystery of madness, greed, and nuanced character testimonials. I introduced this book in my holiday book haul video, stating my interest in reading it because it seemed like it could be a comparable title to The Monk by Matthew Lewis, which I raved about in my Best Books of the Year video. Did it measure up? Nope. Not even close. I'd more readily recommend this book to fans of My Cousin Rachel by Daphne du Maurier because, much like du Maurier's book where our opinion of Rachel is shaped by Philip's attitude, how characters are portrayed in Collins's book is influenced by individual characters telling their version of the story through a first-person perspective. In my How Do I Read So Much video, I mentioned that if I had a long commute, I would use that time to listen to audiobooks. Well, now that I've moved, I have a long commute. The first audiobook I chose to listen to was The Professor and the Madman, A Tale of Murder, Mystery, and the Making of the Oxford English Dictionary by Simon Winchester, a non-fiction book about Professor James Murray, one of the greatest known editors of the OED, and his longtime collaborator, Dr. W.C. Minor, a criminally insane American Civil War veteran who conducted his research from the confines of an asylum for lunatics. This is a fascinating book that offers few surprises beyond the information provided in its subtitle and synopsis, but it held my interest because of Winchester's eloquent writing and the pleasing vocal work of narrator Simon Jones. Simon Jones is a personal favorite of mine. Many of you recommended this book to me based on my interest in lexicography. It was a great recommendation, and when I saw that Simon Jones narrated it, I bumped it to the top of the list. This book mainly focuses on Murray and Minor and how they arrived at this monumental moment in history when their paths finally aligned and a lifelong collaboration based on mutual respect ensued. Winchester touches on the making of the Oxford English Dictionary, a 20-volume behemoth that contains over 500,000 words. He also reveals early approaches to honing the definition of words, and what struck me about that process is that, over the centuries, not much has changed in the way lexicographers define words and compile dictionaries. I know that because of another book I raved about in my Best Books of the Year video, Word by Word, The Secret Life of Dictionaries by Corey Stamper. If you enjoyed The Professor and the Madman, I highly recommend reading Stamper's book. Second from the top is an unassuming little book that really surprised me, Shoebox Funeral, Stories from Wolf Creek by Elizabeth Volz, illustrated by this person whose name I can't fathom how to pronounce. The book opens with a description of a wooded hillside adorned with wild orchid grass, where handmade wooden crosses mark the burial sites of countless shoeboxes, the modest coffins of myriad small farm animals that died over the years, their little bodies buried, but their memory not forgotten. From there, the book launches into a collection of short stories about eccentric, unwanted, or dying animals that young Volz advocated for, loved, and comforted at their time of passing. Most of the animals discussed are cats, but the book also features ducks, bunnies, rats, and more. I'm someone who's really sensitive about animals, so I'll admit some of these stories were difficult for me to read. But the point of the book is not to be morose. Rather, it pays homage to these animals that enriched Volz's childhood. It provides lyrical insight on farm life with a big family, and it explores the feelings of vulnerability and powerlessness that coincide with the death of a loved one. Before I move on to the next book, I have to add that the minimalist illustrations in Shoebox Funeral are an absolute delight. They grace the start of every chapter, and I always anticipated seeing the next illustration. Finally, the best book I read in the month of January was The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien, otherwise known as Volume 1 of The Lord of the Rings, in which the Chosen Nine begin their long and perilous journey across Middle-earth to the fires of Mount Doom. Tolkien leaves behind the cozy narrator found in The Hobbit and assumes a more serious tone in this book, which feels suitable given how much more is at stake. If you're new to Tolkien's work, I definitely encourage you to read The Hobbit first before diving into The Lord of the Rings. The challenge in reading this book lies in getting through its first half, which is arguably the slowest of the 6 books that comprise this 3-volume epic. Personally, I love the opening pages because I can't get enough of Gandalf. If I could wave a wand and magically spend time with a fictional character, Gandalf would be among my top choices. Once Gandalf departs, Tolkien devotes pages to Bilbo walking. Bilbo walks, then he does some more walking, and then some more walking, followed by some additional walking, and more walking, walking. The compensation for this long, slow walk is illustrious prose about trees laden with apples, beds of grass deep and soft and strangely fragrant, and yellow willow leaves fluttering in a warm and gentle breeze. Force yourself to forge through that lazing first half because the second half is marvelous, particularly the chapter about the Bridge of Khazad-dûm. One of the most glorious moments in the entire book is the final paragraph of that chapter. My appreciation for this book has grown with every reread. Why did I love it so much on this third go-around? Well, I hesitate to say this on BookTube, but my adoration for the films has absolutely heightened my enjoyment of the books. In the books, the hobbits aren't really described in a way that makes them easy to visualize or differentiate. After seeing the movie, I now hear the actors in my head, and that has helped me immensely. There's a strange pleasure to be found in reading Gandalf's dialogue and hearing the commanding voice of Sir Ian McKellen. Incidentally, young Ian McKellen, whew, unfortunately he would never pledge himself to a lowly sylvan elf. Love you, Ian. If you've picked up The Fellowship of the Ring in the past and abandoned it, I implore you to give it another chance. Get through that first half, revel in the magnitude of the second half, and reward yourself with The Two Towers. What was the best book you read in the month of January, and what do you think of The Fellowship of the Ring? Let me know in the comments. Thanks, everybody!